It's time to debunk the lies. So we're going to debunk the misdemeanor versus felony talking point. So people say, why is it that Donald Trump was charged with a felony when what he did was essentially a misdemeanor? Was this a miscarriage of justice? Was this a corrupt sham trial? Well, let's examine the facts. All right, so let's clear up some of the confusion about the legal issues surrounding Donald Trump's case. There's been a lot of talk suggesting that his charges were just trivial misdemeanors blown up into felonies by some creative legal interpretations. But let's break this down so it's crystal clear. So first, let's talk about the misdemeanor that Trump was accused of. So it was falsifying business records. Specifically, he recorded hush money payments to Stormy Daniels as legal expenses. Normally, this type of falsification is considered a misdemeanor under New York law. So the misdemeanor law basically states that under penalty of, so let's take a look at the law. So under New York state law, Penal Law 175.10, falsifying business records in the first degree is when someone with the intent to defraud makes a false entry in business records of an enterprise. Now, if it's just that, it's typically a misdemeanor. This is the truth. Now, you might wonder, why is it illegal to record the payment as legal expenses if Michael Cohen was Trump's attorney? Here is the key point. Not everything a lawyer does is automatically legal services. Now, let's examine what counts as legal services. Let's be very clear on what things are and the definitions of words. So legal services generally involve activities that require knowledge and application of law, such as representing a client in court or legal proceedings, preparing and filing of legal documents, right? Providing legal advice on matters of law. Also negotiating legal agreements and settlements. Now, none of this is what occurred, right? And I think for you to understand the issue here, consider what your understanding of what lawyers are and what they do, and ask yourself, if you wanted to pay somebody off to keep quiet, just that's it, not have them sign a contract or whatever, you simply want to just pay them off to keep quiet, would you hire an attorney for that? Right? The whole point of an attorney is their understanding of the law, right? So you're doing a legal action, right? So again, a contract. So if this was a contract thing where you're going to have her sign this thing and you want to make sure that she will abide by it and that you'll be able to sue her if she doesn't follow. No, this was just a behind the scenes backdoor deal type thing. There's no reason for a lawyer to be involved in this process, right? And it's certainly not a legal service, right? So if Michael Cohen was drafting contracts or representing Trump in a lawsuit or providing legal advice, those would have been legitimate legal services. So let's examine why the payments aren't legal services. The payments to Stormy Daniels were made to ensure her silence about an alleged affair with a goal of influencing the election. This is not a legal service, and here's why. The thing that was done has a non-legal nature. The payment was not related to any legal advice, court case, or legal documentation. Also, there was an intent to conceal. The payments were intended to hide potentially damaging information, not to address any legal matter. Trump was not being sued or wasn't trying to sue anyone. Wasn't taking any legal action, so it's clearly not legal services. Also, let's move on to talking about the felony law, so we can articulate how he ended up with a felony for something that bad faith actors are suggesting is just a misdemeanor, right? So the felony law, the law says that if you falsify business records to commit or conceal another crime, it becomes a felony. The payments were intended to influence the 2016 election by keeping damaging information quiet, which means they should have been reported as campaign contributions, not legal fees. Now, concealing this fact makes it a felony, right? Now, let me show you something that, ironically, in contrast. Piers Morgan did a video recently that talked about, he tried to compare what Bill Clinton did with, I think it was Paula Jones, a settlement that he did. So they're like, he paid her off to keep quiet. and then Trump paid off this porn star. Clinton did a settlement. That's a legal procedure. That's something in court. So if he had hired Cohen to handle this settlement, that would have not been him concealing anything. It wouldn't involve falsification of business records, right? And since it's something being done in court in public, if it was done, if he was currently running for office at that point in time, this would have not been like a campaign finance violation, right? But more importantly, what I'm going to highlight is that that is the way that you hire an attorney to do legal services. You take a legal action. A settlement is a legal action. Paying somebody off to be quiet or to silence some story, that's not a legal action, right? Unless you're putting them into some kind of contract or something, it's not a legal action. So that is fraud. To be clear, the fraud is in representing the payment as legal services. That is the fraud, not simply paying off the porn star. Paying off the porn star, legal, not fraud. Labeling it as legal services, fraud. Now, let's look at examples of misdemeanors becoming felonies. So, shoplifting is just a misdemeanor, right? But if you steal something with the intent to resell it, it can become a felony, right? So if someone simply does some shoplifting and they do an investigation, let's say a politician does some shoplifting and they get charged with it, and then we find out that they intended to resell the items, and then they get charged with a felony. Imagine bad faith actors defending this politician, saying that somehow they constructed this thing that's just a misdemeanor. No. Shoplifting alone is a misdemeanor. Shoplifting to sell is a felony, right? Obviously, depending on the jurisdiction. Another example is simple assault. Simple assault is a misdemeanor, right? But if it's part of a robbery, it's a felony, right? I'm going to give you another example of something just like this. If I were to rob a bank and bring no weapons whatsoever, threaten no one, I leave the bank, I speed away, the police chase me, I pull away a mile ahead of the pursuing police officer. That police officer goes around a corner too fast, loses control, and dies. I will be charged with felony murder. Yet I killed no one. I attempted to kill no one. I had no weapon. I was a mile away when the officer, on his own, crashed and died. Yet somehow they, did some crazy interpretation of the law and twisted it around and manufactured some, novel, approach of this legal theory of that because the officer died chasing me, right, I should be charged with murder. This is preposterous. No, it's not preposterous. It's the law. If someone dies in connection with you committing another felony like robbing a bank, the way the law is written, you can be charged with felony murder, right? That is not some travesty of justice or whatever it is. That is the law. Just like the law states that what Trump did is a felony, not a misdemeanor. This is the way the law works. This is the way the law is written. If you don't like the way the law is written, then advocate for the law to change, right? If you have a problem with misdemeanors being elevated to felony based on these different conditions, then advocate for the law to change. Complain about the law. Don't pretend like the law doesn't exist, right? The law exists, and therefore the way it was handled was in accordance with the law, right? So what is it? Don't blame the messenger. Don't kill the messenger, I guess is the expression, right? They're just going along with the law. The judge is going along with the law. The prosecutor is going along with the law, right? Your beef is with the law, not with any of these people who are following the law. If you're law and order, you should be thumbs up. Good job, guys. Anyway, so why is Trump's case a felony? Because he falsified records to hide a crime, namely campaign finance violations. Ignoring this fact is like pretending that a shoplifting spree organized to fund a bigger crime is just petty theft. It's not logical to ignore the underlying crime. So let's look at a hypothetical example. So if Trump had paid Stormy Daniels from his personal account and properly recorded it without any intent to influence the election, it might have stayed a misdemeanor. But because the payments were meant to help his campaign by silencing potential scandals, it crossed into felony territory. Now let's talk about plea deals and accountability. Many people facing felony charges can negotiate them down to misdemeanors by pleading guilty, right? Clinton didn't do that, but he did settle, which avoided a lot of legal risk for him. Trump could have done the same thing. Trump could have done this. He could have admitted his actions and potentially received a lesser charge, but by denying and lying about it, he left no room for leniency and faced the full force of the law, with, of course, special treatment because he's an elite in the form of defying all of these gag orders and getting slaps on the wrist, right? And also, he's very unlikely to go to prison, although someone like me probably would go to prison for something that you don't normally go to prison for, but because of my conduct, I would probably go to prison, right? But Trump is allowed to commit crimes, behave in just a very bad manner, and he's probably not going to suffer any consequences, right? So with a first-time offender, this is the felony E, whatever, and you're showing some kind of remorse, you're following the court's rules and showing the court respect, then you should get a very, very lenient sentence. But again, if it were me and I was defying gag order and insulting people and putting the jury at risk and all the craziness that Trump has done, showing no remorse, I'm sorry, me as a normal citizen, they would roast me. They would just burn me alive, right? Case in point, I actually was convicted of a felony, right? I had no criminal record and I didn't do any fraud. I didn't injure anyone. There wasn't any drugs related. No one was hurt in any way. There was no property damage, right? I actually am a living testament to misdemeanors becoming felony, right? My felony simply came from my failure to follow a police officer's instructions when they were trying to pull me over, right? Now, if I didn't go too far, it would have been just misdemeanor eluding. But because of the fact of how long the pursuit went and the distance covered, it became a felony. For you to argue that I was unfairly treated by getting a felony, right, for something that's just a misdemeanor, that doesn't make any sense, right? You would have to ignore the part of what I did that made it a felony. It wasn't just not following the police officer's instructions. It was in the way that I did it, right? I also pled not guilty, right? Which made me be at the mercy of the court, right? And even though I technically didn't get sentenced to jail, I was in jail for months during the whole process. They didn't even give me the ability to go home to await sentencing, right? So this is how a normal person is treated. A person who's a veteran, a person with no record, a person who does a lot of volunteer work at the time, fully respected the court. I didn't threaten the judge, didn't do none of the stuff that Trump was doing. I was totally respectful of the court, followed all the rules of the court, went to all of my court hearings or whatever. I had to spend $20,000 in legal expenses, right? And for something where no one was injured, there was no underlying crime, I wasn't connected to anything, nothing like that. Not only did I get felony, but I ended up not being able to go home. I lost my job as a result of it. This was devastating for me, right? That is how a normal person is treated, right? If I were Donald Trump, to put it in my situation, right? I would have been sentenced to prison for at least a year. If I had conducted myself the way Trump did, I would be sentenced to prison. They wouldn't have given me time served. I would have been sentenced to prison. But Donald Trump is going to get special treatment as he's been getting all along his entire life, and including now. He's not going to get any prison time. He's going to get a very, very soft slap on the wrist. No big deal. Don't worry about it. But bad faith actors will argue that the opposite happened. Now, do you know that many people who reject plea deals and fight felony charges end up convicted? Right? This is a reality. The percentage of people who reject deals and get convicted anyway is high, making it their fault for not accepting responsibility early on. All right? In conclusion, Trump's actions were not just misdemeanors blown out of proportion. The felony charge stems from the intent to conceal another crime, which is clearly outlined in the law. Ignoring this would be ignoring reality of the situation. And remember, Trump's own decisions to deny and fight the charges instead of taking a plea deal made the situation worse. So next time you hear someone say this was just a misdemeanor, now you know the full story. Stay tuned for more insights and explanations on this whole Trump hush money trial debacle. I mean, the response from the right-wing media is absolutely insane. I mean, the dishonesty, the gaslighting, the traitorous behavior, unpatriotic behavior, just reckless, These people clearly don't care about the country, and it's so amazing. The very arguments that they make about their political opponents directly applies to them. They don't care about the country, they only care about themselves. They would do things that would lead to more destruction in this country if it meant more money in their pockets. These people are savages. Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, savages. They don't care about you. They don't care about conservatives. They don't care about the United States of America. They don't care about our Constitution. All they care about is themselves, which makes sense why they like Donald Trump. This is Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. In a banana republic, Trump would have never been charged. That's the reality.